Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Straczynski. Thank you so much for joining us on episode number 113 of Cards Chat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. Guys, if you're watching this, you'll notice that the guest and I have similar backgrounds. We're both in rooms at the Bahamas Resort in the Bahamas, here at the PSPC, the 2023 PokerStars Players Championship. This is a man, a lot of you know him, but not necessarily by face or by his full name, but rather by his forum member's name of CRStals, CRSTALS. It's Chris Robinson, is one of our longtime active forum members here on Cards Chat. And it just so happens to be that we're both here in the Bahamas. So we thought it would be pretty cool to interview one of you, our forum members here at the Cards Chat community. Over the last, well, obviously by all of the questions that he's asked for the 112 previous episodes, we've gotten to know Chris, but now we really get a chance to know him better. Chris, welcome to the Cards Chat Podcast.
All right, thanks a lot, Robbie. Good morning.
Good morning to you too. And also, I got to point out, you and I had the chance to meet in person and to spend, a nice little bit of time, schmoozing over, over a drink, and we even got to play poker together last night. So it's pretty cool to meet the man behind the screen there.
Yes, no, it was a great time actually. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was nice to kind of do something a little bit not in a 25,000 tournament buy-in with the people and the lights and the cameras all around. It was a nice way to kind of end the day. So
yeah, very cool. Well, I mean, we have, and this is the unusual one, folks. After 112 episodes, it's the first time I haven't actually officially prepared anything in advance. It's just more of a conversation, and I specifically have avoided, Chris, you didn't know this, I've avoided asking you certain questions this entire trip so that it could be fresh and I could learn as well during this conversation. So it's stuff that I've naturally been curious about and have wanted to know. So obviously you're very into poker. How did you first get into it?
yeah, it was interesting back in the early 2000s when the poker boom happened, and it started showing up on TV, and they started showing cards through the whole cams, and the whole moneymaker bit. A bunch of my friends started to get into it, and started to host home games. So I was like, all right, sure, this sounds like a fun game, and started playing 10 cent, 25 cent, or whatever it was back then, just with a bunch of people I knew in high school. And it kind of evolved over time. And the bar poker phenomenon, if you want to call it that kind of came with the poker boom in the early 2000s. When I was out of university, playing 3 nights a week in a local restaurants back home in Kingston, and getting to know a bunch of people, and really started to get to enjoy the game and love the game. And that kind of kept going for a couple of years. And then 2007, it started to take a bit of a back seat. I met a girl at the time. She became girlfriend, fiance, eventually wife of 14 and a half years. So all of those things kind of came with it. And family, 3 kids. It was still there, but it wasn't to the same degree. And then I kind of found the game about 7 years ago. PokerStars sent me an email like, hey, here's 5 $1 spin and go tickets. And it's kind of funny that they gifted me $5 worth of tickets way back when. And then fast forward to what happened within the last few months, I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. It started, I went online, I took the $5 to $1 tickets, turned it into $3. And I'm like, okay, what can I do with $3? Not much. But was scrolling through the site, and I came across free rolls, and then there was this thing called a $100 Cards Chat free roll. I'm like, well, how do I get into that? And that's how I found the forum, and that's
Amazing.
kind of went from there.
Amazing. A loaded answer. We'll try to parse it apart into those little bits. So you had mentioned university, first of all. So what had you gone to study at university, and which university?
Yeah, so I took mechanical engineering at Queen's University in Kingston. I did a Bachelor of Applied Science in Mechanical. and then I transitioned that into a coursework master, so not a theory-based thesis degree, but more of a more additional courses at a higher level. Graduated in 2005 with it. I have not really used it since, but that's kind of how education goes these days. It's not so much what you study; it's having that piece of paper to at least get you looked at when you start to go look for careers and such.
Of course. So, what is your career? What do you do besides ask excellent questions here on the forums and playing 25Ks in the Bahamas?
So my 9 to 5 gig, probably the best way to describe it is I'm a merchandise project manager for the hardware department at Home Depot in Canada here.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Interesting. You've been with them for how long?
So I will be celebrating 13 years with them in May. So
Wow.
it's been a while.
Congratulations. Very
Yeah,
nice.
thank
You
you.
don't really find too many people, at least I think, our age who have stayed in the same job for that long. It's always moving every couple of years to something new. I guess loyalty is a very important trait to you.
Well, to be honest, loyalty is a very important trait at Depot. There are a lot of people that work there that have 20 plus years, 25 plus years. I think they're even starting to creep into the 30 range because it's one of those companies where once you get into it and once you start to be surrounded by that type of environment and that type of work conditions, um, it's tough to walk away from that.
Hmm.
It draws you in. It's very easy to bleed orange as one of the sayings goes, and it's one of those careers where it always challenges you, and they're very much focused on getting the best people, and they don't like to lose the best people. So it's very much a company that it's not one of those companies where you come in for 3 years, you learn the business, they drain your energy to zero, and then you go off and you go do other things. It's not like that at all. It's very much if you're coming here and you're dedicated to us, you basically become a lifer. So
That's
and I
very
really like that actually.
That's very interesting because we have the same sort of modus operandi here at the Cards Chat podcast. We only get the best people, and you are the 113th best person. That's why I was like setting up that joke the entire time. So okay, now so obviously in your free time, you're still playing poker. I'll get to that in a second. But let's go into Cards Chat. So you said you found the forums, I guess, about 7 years ago. What is it about Cards Chat and the forums that appealed to you as like this is a kind of a cool community to be a part of?
Well, I think the first thing that struck me when I found the forum was just how enormous the forum was. Back then, I think it was under 250,000 people that had signed up. That seemed like a huge number. And when you actually spend time in the site and you go through it and you understand all of the different areas of the site and what actually is going on there, you quickly find out that it's not a free roll password site, which many people that see it initially in PokerStars or Party Poker, any of the other sites that free rolls are on. You very quickly realize that wow, there's actually a lot more going on here. And then you start to get into it and you realize that there really is a dedicated, passionate community of people that love the game, but love interacting with each other on various topics and being able to play consistently with these people. It's been something that I've actually thoroughly enjoyed over the years. One of the first things that I was introduced to was the special events that they hold. And then I signed up for one pretty well right away. Got to meet and talk with a bunch of people from Ontario. It was a special event to do with the World Cup, but they did it with a poker spin. So you got to be with this group of people and you play games and it was fun. And then somebody's like, well, you should check the league out. So I went figured out the league. I'm like, okay. And then 24-ish seasons later, I'm still playing the league and captaining my 22nd team, I think, if my math and my memory is right. So it's one of those things where as you get deeper and deeper into it, you realize that there's just so much more to it. And getting to know the people, Debbie and Tammy, of course, have been phenomenal people. And then some of the key people on the site, they're Martin and Shelley, of course, and Donna and Mark and all of the other admins and guides and people that, do so much work to keep the site up and running and going. I bet you a lot of people who played and come into the site casually don't understand how much work actually goes on to keep this site running. And it was just something that just drew me right in, and I've loved every second of it.
That's awesome. And I believe you're also sort of a moderator of sorts, right?
Yeah, I did take that hat on about a year and a half ago. I was a little bit uneasy about it at first, but as I've kind of gotten accustomed to it, you have to swing the band hammer when somebody gets out of line sometimes and swing away. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun. I'm kind of one of those people that has always been interested in, how things work and how things operate and getting involved in that side of things. I'm not one that just likes to casually like just sit there on the sideline and be like, yeah, I'll just come in, post a couple times a week and be done with it. That's just how I'm wired. Anything that I've done, I always need to be shoulder deep into it or it doesn't interest me, I think.
That's really cool. You mentioned your wife of 14 plus years now. What does she think, not just of, your love of poker, but also, how deeply involved you are with this community for so long? What are her views on that?
She is not a poker aficionado by any stretch of the imagination, so it's hard to kind of relate that to her. But she's such an amazing person when it comes to doing things that you like to do, and so long as it's in moderation and we're not getting too focused on just one thing. But yeah, she enjoys it. She understands that I have an enjoyment for the game and supports it 100%, and I couldn't be happier for it. So
That's fantastic. Well, obviously, the games that you play with your fellow Cards Chat forum members, they're online. You had spoken earlier about how you had first gotten into poker. It was much more of a live pursuit. How did online poker sort of become part of your repertoire? And which of the two, quite frankly, do you enjoy more?
well, I think it would have been an interesting question to ask me that a week ago. And the reason that I say that is because one of the things that I find, fascinating and enjoy so much about Cards Chat and the poker community and playing online is that you get to know these people off the felt.
Hmm,
Even though it's not in real life. Like obviously we don't, see these people, we don't, but we talk to these people and we talk to each other on a constant basis, whether it's through, exchange of messages and the forum threads or whatnot. So when it would come to like which, what do I enjoy more from a social side, I online would have been the one because I don't play a lot of live poker.
uh-huh.
Where I'm from, live poker, I don't want to say is dead, but it certainly could use a considerable boost. It is not something that the casinos in Ontario tend to focus on.
Mhm.
They focus more on the games that bring in more rake and more revenue for the casinos. Poker is
Right.
not really a rake generating game. Um, and with COVID, that kind of squashed all of the tournaments that are taking place. So if you're looking for decent poker, you have to travel. You're either going to Montreal or you're going to Detroit or you're going to, Atlantic City, Vegas, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I will say this, being here this week, you really do get an understanding for how much of a social game poker really is. And not just with, sitting in the 25K meeting, people from all different walks of life who outside of a hand you sit there and you chat with and you get to know and the number of people that I've been able to interact with that I would never have been able to meet outside of this reminds me that poker really is a social game and it's something that can be really enjoyed and can be really fun even if you're playing for $4 million at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, that's great. Really beautiful way of putting it. I mean, well, we've obviously been skirting around the issue. Chris, how did you win your platinum pass, the immense privilege to play in this 25K over, I think about a total was 1,014 players, and you got to be one of them. How'd you get that opportunity?
Yeah, my platinum pass story I think is kind of unique, but it's also one that kind of reminds me just how fortunate and lucky I really was to be able to come. So PokerStars Ontario gave a promotion which they call chests and ladders, which essentially meant that if you played enough games and generated enough rake a day, you won a chest that contained a dice. And you had 49 spaces to kind of maneuver your way up a snakes and ladders board. Of course, there's no snakes, thankfully. That would have been kind of a cruel joke. And along the way, there could have been chests that you could have won a $10 satellite ticket. But at the end, you would all get a chest at the end. Half of the chests at the end would have had a $10 satellite ticket in it. Half of them would have had a $20 satellite ticket, but buried in there somewhere was one chest that contained a $30,000 platinum pass. And playing two $10 spin and goes a day for 2 weeks, I was able to accumulate enough dice rolls to get to the very end. I was awarded with the last chest. I was fully expecting to see a $10 or a $20 satellite ticket, and a platinum pass jumped out.
And how did you feel when that happened?
Well, at first, I misread the picture.
Oh
So
no.
well, no, and I said this another time too. I don't want this to be a shot at PokerStars because it's not. But when the chest opened and the pass jumped out, what I read on the screen was PSPC $30 package.
Oh no.
So I'm like, okay. So I was expecting a $10 or a $20 ticket. So I got both. Okay, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I went into the client and I checked to see the tickets and what the tournament schedule was, and there was no tickets there. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So I went back to the screen because it was still open, thankfully, and I reread it again, and it said PSPC 30K.
Aha.
I didn't see the K at first. And I stood there for a second and I was trying to comprehend this. And I was thinking to myself, PSPC 30K, because I was expecting it to say, if it was the pass, platinum
Right.
pass. And I would have expected something outside of just a little thing in the
Oh
past
my
inside the
God.
test, just because of how big of a deal that would have been. There
Uh-huh.
was nothing. There was no fireworks. There was no message from Linda jumped up. There was no email in my inbox. So I'm like, what is actually going on here? Is this a platinum pass? And I was staring at it for a second, like, it might be. So I
Dare to think
contacted.
that, it's like, wow. Okay.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I did what I logically would do in a situation. I contacted support. I'm like,
Sure.
can you help me out here? I opened the last chest. What do you see on your side? And the support person took a minute and come back and said, yeah, we saw that your chest was empty. So we'll credit you a $20 ticket. I'm like, okay, I can't play dumb anymore. Because
Right.
I wanted to see what they would say. I didn't want to like prompt them with it.
Right.
So that's when I said to them, okay, no, this is a screenshot. It
Right.
showed, I think, a platinum pass. And they were like, oh, we're going to have to refer that to a different department. So they sent me on my way into a different part of the support network that they have. And 5 minutes later, somebody came on and said, congratulations, you won a platinum pass. And it was like,
Wow.
it took me a couple minutes to let that sink in.
Uh-huh.
It was this was a Friday night league game, and I went up and told my wife, who was still awake, and
Right.
showed her the picture and told her what it was, and celebrated for a moment. And then, being that it was almost midnight, went to sleep and told the kids the next morning, and it didn't really feel real until I was awarded the actual card on Sunday night, and that's when it kind of officially sunk in.
Unbelievable. Wow, that is an incredible story. My good. And how long ago was that? I mean, we're now February 2nd as this is being recorded. So how long ago did you win the pass?
Memory serves me right, and anybody that knows me well knows that I have a crappy short-term memory. I think it was early to late September when I won it. It was September of 2022. So it's only been a few months as I've had to wait. Unlike some people that won it back in 2020 and have waited 3 years
Yeah.
to come in and realize this dream.
So what's this interim period been like, knowing that you've got this trip to look forward to play in this event? I mean, have you done any sort of preparation? Had you done rather prior to entering the event? Like, what was the September to January like for you?
Yeah, September to January was it was interesting. I decided that I needed to do some homework and really try to get ready for this event. So I did
Sure.
sign up with a poker coaching website at
Okay.
first to try to get some information and access to people and being able to do some studying that way.
Sure.
But that changed late December, early January to a point.
Hmm.
I won't name drop because I'm
No
not that
problem.
kind of person, although I might name drop if you ask me who I met later. Um, but I had reached out to somebody on Twitter because they had just won another World Series of Poker circuit ring. Somebody that I've been following for a very long time, accomplished poker player, reasonably well known in the world. Reached out to him to congratulate him on his on another ring, and then I sent him a note on the side because I had been doing that to a lot of people that I knew, was just asking for advice, people who were here before, pros that I've had some interaction with and tried to talk to. And I asked him, hey, I want a platinum pass. I'm going to the Bahamas in January. I'm going to play this $25,000 event way above my bankroll by any means
Sure.
whatsoever. Have you got any tips for me? And he came back and said, why don't I coach you?
Oh wow, that's so
And
nice.
we set up a deal where I sold part of me in this event in exchange for his time, in the hopes that he could help me tweak my game enough to get into the money so that we could both, realize and profit off our investment. So
Sure.
jumped at that opportunity. I even said to him, like, if this is a case where if you can help me with, call it 4 or 5 tweaks that could allow me to go from, a day one bust out to, a day three min cash, and we can both profit off of that, fantastic.
That's amazing.
And it almost worked.
Oh yes, you did make day three, which is pretty damn
Almost
amazing.
worked. It almost worked.
Uh,
We almost got there. We were 80 short of the money, but yeah,
uh,
so that was good. So I worked with him uh, pretty well leading up to the event in January. Met with him, several times a week, went over hands, kind of went through like the thought process, what I need to do, what I should be doing differently, how I need to be thinking. Applied that as best as I could. And,
mhm.
and and honestly, like I will say, like there's no way I think I could have made day three without some of the things that we had talked about in our sessions, just based on what I saw and what I came across. It was a good preparation for what to expect in a 25K when you're playing against pros that will treat it like you would have treated a $10 tournament, really, at
Right,
the end.
right. Well, that's fascinating. So, like, as far as you looking at yourself now as a poker player, having done all of that training and put in and invested all of that time to improve your game, looking back at where you had been in September when you won the pass, in what areas do you believe you've improved most as a player?
I think my ability to read opponents and focusing on what they're doing, I think has grown dramatically. There was a very specific hand in day one where the player to my immediate left was giving me enough information that I was able to nail his hand to a T, I think 3 times the first 4 levels. Like I knew in my head, 95% this is what they've got. And then they would show down and that's exactly what they had.
Hmm.
So that was a good confidence booster. But that kind of started to dwindle a little bit, I think, once, other pros started to come to the table and mix it up and clearly work to be done there. But I think, seeing that and being able to be like, okay, I do have the ability to read people. I can figure out what some of these hands are that they're playing. I can be able to navigate away from that and stay out of trouble or cause them trouble. That starts to build some confidence in me. So I think that's where the work needs to be. But I definitely think that there was big steps taken 3 months ago to today where I sit with you.
Excellent. And well, obviously you're not regularly competing against the pros. You can pretty much gauge, and even if you're not necessarily a pro, when you're sitting at the table, you can gauge who's been here before and who hasn't. In
Yep.
what way did you sort of feel that, or if at all, that you had to approach playing against the pros differently versus fellow recreational players?
The way that a pro thinks about a hand is different than a way a recreational player thinks about a hand. Rec players tend to think of their own hand and their own range and what image they're portraying, whereas a pro is thinking about what image their opponents are portraying and using that against them. And it was pretty obvious to me on day one as well as on day two who were the pros, who were the people that you had to watch for. And some of them were really easy to spot. Like, again, not going to name names, but day two, sitting at the table, when the person is talking to the dealers by name, every single time the dealers change, and you recognize that this guy is playing the EPT, because PokerStars, I think, generally has a pool of dealers that travels
Correct.
with from location to location. So if these
Right.
players are playing the same events, they're going to know the dealers. You really kind of open your eyes and go, okay, you're used to this kind of a grind, so you know what's going on here.
For
So
sure.
then you have to approach hands with them differently than you would say somebody who has zero interaction with the dealers, zero interaction with other players, because they either want to pass or they're a local recreational player from the States who are now playing in the 25K and not used to playing in that kind of, you very quickly figure out, who is the people that you have to approach hands differently very fast in this type of environment.
It's so funny. You're reminding me of back in, goodness, it's probably like 2004 or something, when I had gone to Atlantic City for the first time, and I had that exact same experience. I'm playing, 1-2, no limit. And, at the time I was in my early 20s, and I remember that same exact thing of like the dealer greeted one of the players by name. Oh, not that they're necessarily a pro. Oh, they're ridiculous. Yeah, I got to be careful. It's
Yep.
so true though. But it's a very interesting, a thing that does happen, and well spotted and pointed out. So that's pretty good. Um, Obviously, I imagine I'm gonna take a leap of assumption here that you've never really put in as much time and effort into poker study as you have since September. Is that something that you want to and see yourself continuing to do, and now having perhaps some goals to, if not qualify for 25Ks event again, but maybe like move up in stakes slowly but surely due to the study that you'll be putting in?
I think poker studying is something that, if you're going to play the game at any sort of regular levels, you have to do these days.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're just going to bleed money faster than you can put it into your account. So do I see myself studying to the same degree as I've been doing the last 3 months? Probably not. Um, do I see myself continuing to study on a level above what I did before? Probably. I don't see why I wouldn't. But I also don't view poker for me as something that is going to be a revenue generating engine anytime soon.
Huh.
I enjoy the game. I enjoy, sitting down at a table and just playing along. And if we win, fantastic. If we lose, okay, we'll get them next time, kind of idea. But it's not something that I see myself necessarily moving up in stakes anytime soon. I've moved up in stakes just over time, just based on coming out of the micros, and back when I was first getting back into poker and playing online with those $5 spin and go tickets. I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, geez, I don't understand how people can play a $25 spin and go or $100 tournament. Fast forward to 2022. When am I playing? I'm playing $10 and $25 spin and
Uh-huh.
goes and lighting in $100 tournaments. So it's not like perception has changed over time as the bankroll has grown
Hmm.
a little bit. I mean, it's not like I'm not playing on $20 anymore.
Sure.
But at the same time, I don't see myself getting into the 1-2 worlds, the 2-5 worlds, or anything like that. I'm quite happy with where I'm playing and where I'm at. I'm comfortable with it. And if things change and I'm able to, play $50 spin and goes in 5 years, great. And if I don't, right now I'm totally okay with that.
Excellent.
Coming into this whole event, you know, even if I won the 4 million,
Hmm.
um, poker wasn't going to become the focal point. I have a good thing going at home. I do enjoy my job. It's a stressful job, but I do enjoy it. I do like the people that I work with and the job that I'm doing. But my family's first and foremost. And poker is one of those things where if you get to a certain level, it can completely take over. Like these people that travel and play these events worldwide, and the investment of time that they have to make away from their families and things like that. I'm not in my 20s anymore, Robbie. I can't, I'm not wanting to do that.
Uh-huh.
That's not something that's not a goal of mine. I,
Sure.
I want to see my kids grow up. I love spending time with my kids and my dogs and my wife. And then that's really what my focus is and what's important to me.
And how old are your kids?
So I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 6-year-old at home.
Beautiful. Very
So
nice.
it's a busy house. It's a busy house. And as you know, they did not travel with me as much as that. As much as I was sad to leave them at home, and I do miss them dearly. It was able to focus a little bit more on the PSPC,
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about, okay, I gotta meet them for dinner or
Right.
anything like that. There wasn't that kind of expectation, which helped, I think, a little bit. But sitting here now with day 4 starting and not having a seat,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the missing them at home is sitting in a little bit. So 48 hours until I get to be home with them again. So
Uh,
looking
that,
forward to that for sure.
that's sweet. I'll pursue that line of questioning in a moment, but I did just want to ask, when you mentioned the word bankroll, in my experience, as a serious recreational player and media person as well, there are lots of players with bankrolls, and there's most players with budgets. And the
Yes.
difference being, if you've got a budget, you tend to be on the not winning side of the ledger most of the time. You say you've got a bankroll. What is your approach to bankroll management as someone, recreational player with a steady job, and this is not what you depend on for income? How have you approached, your poker money? Is it something you've segregated? And just sort of what's your opinion on bankroll management in general?
Yeah, I don't tend to throw money into it. I tend to just let it sit there. I stick to, reasonably, sound bankroll management rules. I'm not playing, stakes that I can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is that I don't feel that, my game needs to be at that level. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to go play the $100 tournaments. If I satellite into it, fantastic. But if I don't, I'm okay with that. I'm
Sure.
not going to go direct buy into, the Sunday specials or the Venoms of the world.
Uh,
Um, things like that. I stick to what I'm comfortable playing and comfortable losing, and we go from there. I,
nice.
and and I think I know a lot of poker players do tend to use a budget, and hey, to each their own. If you're able to throw $100 a month into it, or $200,
Mhm.
whatever your financial situation is, and that's what you're cool with, and it doesn't affect your day-to-day life, have at it, go for it.
Yep.
Why not?
Absolutely.
But kids are expensive, real estate is expensive, food is
Hmm.
expensive. So yeah, I do tend to leave the money where it is. I don't add to it, but haven't taken that much out of it. Took a little bit out a while ago, but generally speaking, it sits there.
One of the things, I'm of the same way also. It's always on the side, and thankfully I can also say I've got a bankroll rather than a budget. And when I'm taking anything out of it, it's always precisely for that purpose, for that little extra joy. Miriam, my wife, is always very cool with me going and playing and stuff. So, occasionally I'll take a little bit out and say, okay, guys, we're all going to go out to dinner together. And, don't thank me, thank everyone in the home game. That's
There you go.
which is always fun to do. Well, one thing, besides playing poker, here in the Bahamas with this beautiful weather, it's slightly warmer than in the Great White North, where you're from, north of the border, just a little bit. You got 48 hours left of your time here. How will you? I hope you won't just be at the felt. How do you intend to spend this time? Maybe basking in the glow of the sun a little bit?
Yeah, I think the water park here at the Bahamas is calling my name this afternoon, so I think we will check that out. I will definitely spend some time on the beach today. Um, there will be one more opportunity to go to the felt tonight. The Platinum Pass Invitational is this evening. That was the one tournament that I was really looking forward to playing. Nikhil Segal, who was I guess you want to say the host of this event in 2019 when he was here, brought it back this year with PokerStars. I've talked to Nikhil for years. We did the Ultimate Sweat with Jamie
Oh,
Staples back in
nice, nice.
2018. So we had a little bit of interaction there. He's a wonderful person. He interacts with us at CardsChat on a frequent basis. And I do consider him a friend. We've chatted. We've had some time together here in the Bahamas, and really looking forward to that. But other than that, I think that the poker is done for here. I think I did enough damage, get the day 3 of the 25 and play a little bit tonight and enjoy the sun and the sand before I have to go back home to the minus 15 Celsius
Oh, goodness.
temperatures that are waiting for me on Saturday, from what it sounds like. So we'll go back to reality in a couple of days.
I hear that, and hopefully you'll have some wonderful and heartwarming and happy stories to tell family, friends, colleagues at work. That's just really great. I'm happy that overall you had a very positive experience here. Truly awesome. Folks, usually this is the point in the podcast where I say, hey, it's time to turn to you, our podcast community over in Cards Chat, to see what questions you wanted to ask our guests. As everyone knows, we do have a dedicated thread in the Cards Chat forums for this. So as we announce our future guests, we always ask you to send in your questions. We're not doing that this time because we literally have one of the forum members, a moderator, CRStals, who always puts forth questions. So I will ask you a couple questions, segments related questions. How do you think, and you always come up with some very good, thorough questions that you put through, you take the time to do this. What sort of thought process, goes through your mind when you're saying, okay, I want to put these questions forward, and they're really good. I always enjoy asking them.
I think one of the things for me is that I've always thought this, I've always said this, and I have proven this week. Poker players are some of the most interesting and humble people that you'll ever come across in life. The people that I've met here, they've been absolutely amazing. So I love to understand more about them, and knowing who's coming on the podcast. It always gets me going to say, okay, if this person was in front of me right now, what would I want to know about them? And that's what kind of always drives me to do some homework, do some research, remembering things, specifically if it's people that I recognize. Like Arlie, for example, is a perfect example. He was just on the podcast not that long ago.
Yep.
I think it was 111 or 112. I can't remember. It was one of the two.
Yeah,
He's
you're
very
on the ball. Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, his whole Big Brother experience, and then transitioning to poker, the 12 labors of Arlie, and
Right.
his just incredible work ethic when it came to dedicating to the game. But it was funny because I had seen him and had met him for the first time days before that podcast was announced and came out, right? So I had a bit of an inside track when I was thinking of questions to ask him, but I had asked some of those already to him face to face, and that's kind of why we want to get to know these people, and connecting to these people that we've seen on TV winning, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars or whatever the case might be. It's always fascinating to kind of, dig a little deeper and get to know these people, not for the poker player, but for the person. And that's one of the things that I always like to understand is, how do these people think? What do they, what are they away from, like off the felt, things like that. And that's just, again, just like me wanting a deeper level of understanding.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, definitely that's something that resonates with me. I'm not just a podcast host who asks the questions. I'm genuinely a curious person and inquisitive, and I do always try, at least for 112 episodes, to prepare well so I can ask the good questions. But I have to say, this has been a lot of fun, even in just a conversational, ad hoc, spontaneous kind of way. Really getting to know you better, Chris. I got two more questions for you that I semi-prepared. One of them is, well, now that we've been talking for a while and I've sort of come to the end of my question list in my head, is there anything that you had wished or wanted that I did not ask you that you'd like me to ask you about or talk about?
Well, you didn't ask me an acid burn question, so I appreciate that one.
Shout out Acid Burn FX.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. He he is an interesting fellow. And it's funny because every time I see the questions that he asks in the thread, I'm always like, I'm really curious where some of those come from because like he really does kind of go out there. And I mean, like, listen, like they're awesome questions. They really do get you thinking. But yeah, so I appreciate you not asking any of those. Um, yeah, like I don't know. I don't know when we had chatted about coming on originally, I was thinking like, what would you have asked me? And I honestly have no, I didn't have any idea what you were going to, other than like, history and how you got in the game and when the past and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think there's anything specifically. But I'll throw out a couple of things. It's for me, the most interesting thing that happened here at the PSPC, I think without a doubt, had to have been day two for me, sitting down at the table with the people that were at my table and just the dynamic that existed. Richie Robb was at my table. Shout out to Richie, amazing guy, super awesome to talk to, humble guy, great poker player. Thoroughly enjoyed sitting with him. Dinesh Alt was to my immediate right. Very, very stoic, very, very tough person to beat at the table. He cashed, I believe. He was a past winner, but he was definitely one that was not a recreational past winner, and I really enjoyed spending time with him. Paul Denaub was next to me on my left on day two. Real fascinating guy out of Vegas, football fan, hockey fan. So we kind of bonded over that a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
chatted. And then day one, meeting Colton, Colton Blomberg, I believe his name was. He cashed as well. Um, a poker pro I'd never heard of before, but got to spend 8 hours with him at the table, and that was really solid guy. Really enjoy him. Made some friends on this trip. Istvan from Hungary. He was the EPT Prague third place finisher in the main event back in December. Just had a baby. He was on my right on day one, and spent 8 hours with him. And what I came to be, going through all of this was, just how vast the poker community is. We all see the Daniel Negranos, the Phil Ivies, the Phil Hellmuths, those types of people that are the names in the world. But there's a lot of other pros out there, and there's a lot of other fascinating, amazing, and humble people that we don't know anything about. And those are the kinds of people that would be really fun and fascinating to get to know better. And I know that you've done 113 podcasts now with myself, and I'm looking forward to getting to know some of the lesser known pros, if you want to call them that. I don't want to diminish their skill sets or what they've achieved, but the people that aren't going to show up on high stakes poker, the people who are not going to register $300,000 to play the super high roller bowl or the 250K here in the PSPC. I'll tell you, that was a fascinating tournament to be on the rail for.
Awesome. Well, very cool. I mean, I got to say, like, listening to that, it's so, I guess, rare. I mean, we're obviously always in touch, and this entire segment of every single show is designed to have that direct engagement, as direct as possible, with the Cards Chat community, and it's not just this podcast that exists separately from everything that goes on in the forums, in the hundreds of thousand members of community. And it's somewhat relatively rare that I get to interact directly, whether here on the podcast or face to face with yourself, Chris. But it's so great to hear that sort of feedback from you. And at the end of the day, as much as I love hosting this podcast and talking to people, it is about the Cards Chat community and what you guys want to hear. And we always say, if there's someone you do want to get on the podcast, suggest it to us and we'll try. And it's so great to hear that feedback from you. I appreciate it. And 113 episodes in, after 2+ years, we're still going strong and lots more folks to interview. But I will say that this has been a very special and pleasant conversation, especially since we've now met in person, we've hugged, we've battled at the felt, and now we've had a great opportunity to get to know each other better. Folks, you did not submit your questions this time, but I do encourage you. Maybe you could be the next CRStals. You're always submitting questions, and maybe you'll be the next interviewee here on the CardsChat podcast. There is a dedicated thread on the forums for this, so please be sure to send in your questions. And guys, if you like the show, please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word via your social media channels. CRStals, Mr. Chris Robinson, before we leave, anything else you'd like to share with the CardsChat community?
No, just for all the support, for those that have followed me on social media, and for those that have been in the forum leaving messages and good wishes and run good. Just really appreciated everything that everybody has said. This entire experience has been, it's been very humbling, but it's been very, it's been amazing, to say the very least. And then I feel very fortunate that I got this opportunity. I'm exceptionally thankful to PokerStars for giving people like me this opportunity to travel and play in a 25K, and to just be in this type of environment for a week. It's not something that guys like me get to experience at all. So the fact that I was chosen to do this, I'm indebted for life for them to that. So
Could not have happened to a nicer guy. Folks, thank you again so much for tuning in to another episode of the Cards Chat Podcast. I'm Robbie Straczynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife. I wish you all a wonderful